I love F.E.A.R. I get the constant itch to go back to these offices and turn a replica into red mist with a shotgun. As such, I've made about every kind of content for the original F.E.A.R. you can, except for one thing. I've never covered the console versions. In fact, I recommend people not to play them. But the PC version is the definitive way to play F.E.A.R., and it's so important to not play the console version instead. Why have I never made a video of it? Hey, JarekTheGamingDragon here, and that's exactly what this video is about. How bad is F.E.A.R. really? On console. Well, before I could even do this, I had to buy the game for 360, which isn't hard. This is a pretty successful game, so you can get used copies really easily. So I did that. Went online, found a pretty cheap used copy of F.E.A.R. on the 360, and then plopped it into my 360. Just to have the disc not be able to be read. Open tray? There's already a disc in there. Alright, let me try it again. Maybe this disc is bad. Let me get another game. Oh, maybe there's dust on the laser. Let me go ahead and clean that off and try again. Oh man, it looks like it finally happened. My 360 has finally bit the dust. Kind of, at least the disc reader part has, which I know is fairly easy to fix, but I'm amazed it survived this long. I've had this thing since high school. This is an OG Xbox 360. Never red ringed, never gave me a problem. Put so many hundreds of thousands of hours into this thing. And now, it finally died. It just required the original version of F.E.A.R., I guess. Now, digital games still work, so I guess I could buy F.E.A.R. digitally and play it on my 360 and try that. Except, no, I can't, because you can't buy F.E.A.R. or its expansions on 360 digitally. Just like how on Steam, you can't buy it separately without buying the entire damn pack of games. Why do I need to buy the F.E.A.R. franchise to get the first game? That's the only one people want. Alright, probably because of that exact reason. As a reminder, the only logical place to buy F.E.A.R. is on GOG, where you can get it for $10 and it comes with the expansions and you don't need to buy anything else. But that really means we gotta give a proper send-off to my OG Xbox 360. So, now what? Well, thankfully, I do have an Xbox One, and this game is backwards compatible. And I have the original DVR looking ass Xbox One. This means it's not running at a higher resolution or getting an FPS boost or auto HDR. This is basically an emulated version of the 360 game. All I had to do is turn on my Xbox One that I haven't used in forever. If you're wondering, my consoles being stacked is not why my 360 died. I basically never use my consoles. They're just there to look good. But I turned my Xbox One on. It took forever to update because I hadn't played it in so long. And then I had to install F.E.A.R. and update that, but I could finally play. This delayed me streaming by about an hour, which was a little annoying because I want to catch people on the East Coast before they go to bed. Why can't everyone just be in real-time land? Otherwise known as the Pacific Standard Time. As a relevant note, I streamed this game on my birthday, and you guys gave me so many birthday wishes, donated so many bits, even donated money randomly, so many new subs. It really does mean a lot to me. I had a lot of fun while streaming, and hanging out with you guys is just enjoyable. Especially with this model, I've just been having more fun with it. So seriously, huge thanks to everyone that showed up to that stream, it really did mean a lot. Anyway, yeah, now with F.E.A.R. running on my Xbox One, we're finally ready to go. But there's also one other console version. The PS3 version, and it's by far the worst version to play. Yeah, F.E.A.R. was one of those weird in-between console generation games. It came out in 2005, which was at the end of the original Xbox and PS2's lifespan, but just before the Xbox 360 and PS3's lifespan. As a result, it was a PC exclusive that then got ported to 360 and then got ported to PS3. If you remember anything about this era, it's that PS3 has no game.
It requires huge financial investment, $599 US.
Yeah, this time was really rough for Sony. It was an expensive black box that had little exclusives, and any third-party games ran way worse on the PS3 than the 360. It's actually really impressive that Sony turned this around by the end of this generation. In fact, PS3 took over the 360 by the end of it. But yeah, this was one of those ports that wasn't particularly good. It was supposed to target 30 FPS, but you'd be lucky if it even reached that, and it stuttered all the time. It was only 720p resolution, which is what you would expect for back then, but even for the small resolution, it just didn't look good. Textures were blurry and muddy, lighting wasn't as good as the other versions, the flashlight didn't even cast shadows. Load times are also obscenely slow, far slower than the other versions. This version is by far the worst. While the 360 version has a lot going for it, the PS3 version doesn't. It's by far the worst, and you should stay clear of it. In contrast, the Xbox 360 version also ran at 720p, but was around 30 FPS, and generally was a bit more stable. It did have frame rate dips, but it's still an improvement. God, I love F.E.A.R. It's a far cry from the PC version, running at full native HD and 60 FPS or whatever you want, but still, keep in mind where we are. 2006 for the Xbox 360. Resolutions are also muddier here than the PC version, but better than the PS3 version. Forgivable for a console of the time, but even back then a PC could run this at 60 FPS, and in 2024, it's really painful to go back to 30 FPS when you're used to playing at least 60. It just goes to show that early PS3 ports made pretty much everything look good. It is important to mention that since I am playing this on Xbox One, the frame rate is a lot more solid. I'm not getting an FPS boost, so I'm not getting 60 FPS, but it is locked at 30. It did drop every once in a while when there was a big explosion or something, but that was fairly rare. It's also really important to mention that the Xbox Series X and S get those FPS frame rate boosts, get the higher resolution up to 4K, and get auto HDR. The Xbox One, at least the DVR one, does not. Not all backwards compatibility is equal. But Jarek, you may be saying, that doesn't sound too bad. In fact, that sounds pretty good for a console port at the time. And you'd be right, up until this point. In fact, there's even some exclusive content here that you wouldn't get on PC. The most notable thing being new guns entirely. The Xbox 360 gets these machine pistols, quote unquote. They're really just chopped down full auto AR-15s. These things are, well, I mean, they're fun, but they're pretty low quality compared to the rest of the guns in the game. In fact, they share the pistols animations entirely. Yes, that includes when you're just carrying one of them. Oh my god, it has literally no animation whatsoever. It literally is the pistol reload. It's literally just the pistol reload. I don't think they expected people to do that. They tried to cover this up by you virtually always having two, but if you pick up another weapon and then only pick up one, that's what you get. It's also kind of just a replacement for the SMG. It does the same role that gun does, but a little bit better, but is still kind of weak, so it's an early game option. It's still cool to have new content, but it's really nothing to buy a game over. The PS3, on the other hand, got a semi-automatic shotgun that's just as strong as the base F.E.A.R shotgun. Where was this? Why couldn't I have gotten that? Sony fans got super lucky on this one. The other new kind of content you get are exclusive levels that are complete trip to play. At the main menu, if you go to Instant Action, these are short time trial style levels where you get a score at the end, and there's even Xbox Live leaderboards. And like I said, these levels are a trip because they're based on previous single player levels you've played hundreds of times before, but different. Doors you usually would go through are locked, and now there's an entirely new path. You have different rooms in the same area with entirely new enemy placement. Dare I say it, this is pretty darn good and a lot of fun. It's almost like you're playing official modded content. And look at that. On the leaderboard, I'm almost right next to Toilet All-Star. Okay, so as negative as I've been in the past about this console port, it has some good things going for it. In fact, it's a decent port that isn't optimal because of a few really big things. The biggest issue is the controls. Now, this was an early 360 era game, so you can't rebind your controls. You're gonna have to choose one of their very many presets. None of these are particularly good. At least not for F.E.A.R. The default controls are somewhat similar to Halo, which works in those games, but even then I would change those controls to bumper jumper. For a game as fast and action-packed as F.E.A.R., you want to remove your thumbs from the analog sticks as little as possible. Bumper jumper really would have been your best bet. But instead, you're either going to have to claw or let go of the analog sticks to use a medkit, to jump, to use slow-mo, to throw grenades, or to melee. These are all things you do all the time in F.E.A.R. Like, it is imperative for you to be doing this stuff. The best control scheme you can get, in my opinion, is Boxer. This puts melee to the left trigger, so at least you don't have to let go to do that, but then grenade goes to B, which you have to stop aiming to throw a grenade, which is not ideal. Changing weapons is on the right bumper here, which just cycles through your 3 weapons. Down on the D-pad is to use your flashlight, up on the D-pad is to cycle through your grenades, which I guess is fine. But left and right on the D-pad is to make you lean. This effectively locks you in place and makes it so you can't move when you're leaning. Suddenly something really made sense. One of the most common comments I got when I was making a video of Sulaco was people saying that it did not play like F.E.A.R. because it was too fast and action-packed, and that F.E.A.R. was a slow-paced tactical horror game, which... what? No, it's not. Just objectively, it's not. They tried to make it a John Woo movie, but in a video game. But playing the console version made this click for me. These controls are so ass that people played slow. That's how they remember it in their head, because for them, that's how it was. The controls also have another really weird issue of just eating inputs out of nowhere, especially when you're trying to jump. And I don't mean in the sense of, I swear I pressed the jump button before that gap. No, you just won't jump when you press the button sometimes. I even had a situation where I quite literally could not jump until I slide kicked, then it let me jump again. I really don't know what's going on with this game eating inputs, but when it comes to jumping, that's a huge deal, because that jump kick you were going to do doesn't happen, and now you're getting lit up. On top of that, everything feels like it has input delay. Now, some of this definitely has to do with Xbox One's backwards compatibility. But this is something I remember on the original 360. It just wasn't this extreme. The backwards compatibility on the original DVR-looking Xbox One for some reason always did this, and it made it unplayable to me. I remember getting curious and trying to play backwards compatibility with Black Ops 1, and that input lag being so bad that I quickly gave up. Here it's more playable because you're playing against NPCs, but in a multiplayer environment, screw that. I also found myself getting stuck on a lot more things in the environment, which I didn't do on the PC version. I would usually just slide off the objects. Aiming is even worse. Now, the aiming itself actually feels pretty good. This feels like an early 360 game. I'm quite used to that. The problem is aim assist. It is very strong, but oftentimes gets in your way. And sometimes it just goes haywire for no reason. Oh god, that was the aim assist. Holy shit. Can someone clip that? I wasn't pushing anything. It just straight up pulled my aim that direction. But even more problematic than that is that this game has bullet magnetism, which is totally unnecessary. This almost never helps you and just gets in the way. It's not like you're shooting at opponents moving like crazy. It's not like you're playing a boomer shooter. You don't need this level of bullet magnetism. It genuinely makes both the ASP rifle and the Type 7 particle cannon unusable depending on what the enemies are doing. Why did that shoot over there? Oh, aim assist. Cool. Freaking aim assist. Oh my god. Whereas on the PC version, you can just point and click on heads. And on the console version, you'd be able to do that too if it didn't have bullet magnetism. The console port also has pretty bad audio. Not in the quality of it, these sound effects are perfectly fine, but in surround sound, which is sort of a big deal with a game that has a horror vibe. It's also a big deal when the enemies have so many audio cues, but you can't tell where they're coming from. The time this is the most annoying is when you're fighting those ghosts. They can literally attack you from any direction, and you literally cannot tell where they're coming from. Then there's a host of different changes that aren't really detrimental to the game, but are just interesting. For example, this horror segment starts the moment you get to the hole rather than fall into the water. Or in this section, you no longer have to shoot Alma in this room, but you do have to shoot her still in the hallway. These changes don't make the game different in any significant way, but they are interesting. What does change the game significantly, though, is that it now has backpack reloading. This was not a thing on the PC version. If you shoot a gun, swap weapons, and then swap back, it will be fully reloaded. This will happen instantly. This obviously is kind of broken. If you want to play this game like a boomer shooter, you can. However, F.E.A.R wasn't really made to play that way, and it is supposed to be atmospheric to an extent. This really feels not intentional. Now, I don't dislike the idea of backpack reloading, just I don't think it's fit for every game. I don't like the backpack reloading in Half-Life 2 either, but at least there's a cooldown. If you swap weapons immediately, you won't have the gun be reloaded. I have two theories as to why they did this. The first one is that it's not intentional and it's just a bug. The second one, and I think this is most likely, they were trying to fix a niche situation that happened all the time. You see, when you're reloading, you cannot swap weapons in F.E.A.R. If you try to swap weapons, it will buffer the fact that you're trying to swap the weapon. So it will play out the reloading animation and then swap weapons. The problem is, the weapon won't actually reload when you do this. If you look in the bottom right when you're reloading, your ammo counter doesn't go up until the animation is completely finished. And if you buffer a weapon swap, then it will swap just before the animation completes. This is kind of jank, but it's one of those things that you pick up on pretty quick if you know F.E.A.R. If this was how they're trying to fix that, I don't understand. An easier way to fix it would just be, let me cancel the reload animation. Because you can cancel the reload animation to melee, why can't I do it to swap weapons? And again, backpack reloading in concept is actually really cool. When a game implements it as a mechanic, like say RoboQuest, it works really well. But I don't think it fits here. It also sets off that OCD part of my brain where I've shot a gun and then I swap weapons, and in the back of my head I know I have to reload, but it's already fully reloaded. I don't actually have OCD, but you know what I'm saying here. And then there is the melee, which has been totally neutered in this version. Interestingly enough, it has the same issues that F.E.A.R 2 did. A lot of times, jump kicking enemies just doesn't work, you just slide off of them. Again, this is the same issue that F.E.A.R 2 had. I'm convinced that's related. But then there's a more interesting problem that I didn't expect. You see, I will always play F.E.A.R on the highest difficulty. I've played it so much, I know where all the enemies are, and you get so much slow-mo, it's just a really easy game. On higher difficulties, enemies are going to do more damage to you. That is to be expected. I actually love how they do this. You do just as much damage to the enemies that they do to you. I love it. This is how difficulty should be done. However, a lot of times when you jump kick enemies, they will continue firing as they're dead, and you'll just die because they light you up. Oh my god, what was killing me? What did so much damage me there? This isn't something that happens on PC. When you kick them, they generally drop their weapon and go flying backward. I'm not sure why this is, but I could easily see someone dying by this and then getting discouraged to even kick at all. Which sucks, because the melee is a huge part of F.E.A.R. So that's the 360 version of F.E.A.R. Is it completely awful? No. It's actually a pretty decent port for its time. But the main problem is just that F.E.A.R came out in 2005. If you have a computer at all, you can play F.E.A.R, and the PC version is so much better that you don't have any other reason than to play that one. The unique problems the console version presents to players makes you play the game entirely differently in a way that wasn't intended. You're not getting the full F.E.A.R experience unless you're playing the PC build. I know it's tempting if you have an Xbox Series X or S to pick up the controller and play it in 4K 60 FPS, but you can do that on PC with a mouse and keyboard, and I would highly advise you to do that instead. I know a lot of people prefer controllers. I'm not really sure why when it comes to shooters, but in this case, it really is important that you play on mouse and keyboard. You'll have a better experience. So that's it. That's F.E.A.R on the Xbox 360. Hey, go ahead and watch this video here if you like my stuff, or maybe subscribe to me over here. Huge thanks to my YouTube members that get to see all of these videos early. As soon as they're done, I post them for my YouTube members to see. Also, I have a Twitter, I guess. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Jarek_Dragon. I tweet out nonsense all the time. It's not X.